We're only 91 days away from Election Day, 42 days away from early voting. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, well, they may be the most liberal ticket in history, in the history of this country. They are radical, they're extreme, and if their policies were ever implemented, I think they'd be downright dangerous. Anyway, here with his thoughts, Republican vice presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Senator, good to see you. I saw you in Pennsylvania today, and unlike Kamala Harris, you were actually willing to talk to the press. I got to give you props for that.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. What I think is, if you want to be the people's vice president or president, you actually ought to go before the journalists, even the hostile ones, and actually answer some questions. Donald Trump does it nearly every single day. Of course, I'm willing to do it. And it really should shame the media, Sean, that Kamala Harris, who is the most liberal presidential candidate that we've ever had in this country, refuses to answer basic questions about her record. Why did she support a ban on fracking? Why did she support defunding the police? Why does she want to ship American manufacturing jobs to China? Why is she the border czar at a time of historic border crisis? The fact that the media is letting her coast without answering a single question is really disgraceful. And the fact that Kamala Harris is willing to have this thing handed to her without actually persuading the American voters is really scandalous and shows she should never be president.
The media has no shame. I declared in 2007 and 2008 that journalism is dead. You talked about Tim Walz and his record as a joke, and that he also, Kamala Harris, bent the knee to the pro-Hamas wing of her party. Explain.
Well, we know that the people who were considered were Josh Shapiro, Mark Kelly, and this guy, Tim Walz. And we know that Josh Shapiro in particular was attacked mercilessly from the far left for being Jewish, for not being anti-Israel enough. And of course, he ran away from his own positions. But the fact that you're letting anti-Semites within the Democrat Party drive so much of the conversation and so much of the decision-making for Kamala Harris is a really worrying sign, Sean. You have to ask yourself, who does Kamala Harris answer to? Does she answer to the American people, or does she answer to the far left of her own party? On issue after issue, from opening the border to supporting higher grocery prices on American, she has bent the knee to the far left of the party, and this decision, selecting Tim Walz, is another sign that she doesn't care what the American people think. She is only in this to obey the far left radicals within her own party. It's a really shameful moment for Kamala Harris. You know, Tim Walz has all of these things we can point to. He's a really far left candidate. He's a really far left governor. But the fact that Kamala Harris selected him, I think, shows really, really poor judgment, and that she doesn't have what it takes to be president of the United States.
I think it shows, too, that this is who she is. I mean, I really have to wonder if they even bothered to vet her. I want to go a little deeper. I want to go to the comments because I think they were pretty profound. And that's from Van Jones, who said, but you have anti-Semitism that has gotten marbled into this party. You can be for the Palestinians without being an anti-Jewish bigot, but there are anti-Jewish bigots out there. He's talking about his own party, the Democratic Party. And there's disquiet, there has to be. How much of what just happened is caving into some of the darker parts of the party? He's talking about the Democratic Party. And it has become, you know, we saw what happened. I think one of the worst failures of the Biden and Harris administration is when Iran was attacking Israel. We're still, you know, the world is on edge, expecting another attack from Iran on Israel. I wouldn't be surprised if Hamas, Hezbollah weighed in as well. And what their answer was is, well, we'll defend you, but you're on your own if you want to retaliate. That, to me, is surrendering in the war against radical Islamic terrorism. But Kamala Harris, we now know, said that we should be courageous and never use that term. Well, then who attacked us on 9/11? You served in Iraq. Who attacked us on who attacked Israel on October 7th?
Yeah, it's exactly right, Sean. And look, you don't have to judge my words. Just actually pay attention to what the Democrats said about Josh Shapiro. Numerous grassroots activists, numerous leaders within the Democrat Party said you shouldn't choose this guy because he's Jewish. I take them at their word. That's face value, and that is ridiculous for any American political party. Obviously, you know, I don't care ultimately who Kamala Harris selects, but I don't want the vice presidential nomination of any party being determined by whether you have the right ethnic background. It's profoundly anti-American. And to your point, Sean, it goes to the heart of their terrible policy. These are guys who invited weakness. These are guys who invited the attack on Israel. These are people who invited every single anti-American despot all over the world to get richer and more powerful because of their policies. And now that our allies and ourselves are under threat, they're doing absolutely nothing about it. Here, we talked about the media not asking Kamala Harris questions, Sean. Here's a question I'd like to ask Kamala Harris. If Joe Biden can't do the job, and clearly he can't, who's actually in charge of the United States government right now? Is it you? And if you're not doing something, why not?
She sponsored Medicare for All bill that would eliminate all private health care. Kamala Harris did. She sponsored the Green New Deal in the U.S. Senate, said she would use the filibuster to pass the Green New Deal. No restrictions at all on abortion. And Walz said one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. And Kamala wants either a 70 to 80% tax rate. They want to raise taxes on income, corporations. They want to raise it on small business. They want to even want it on unrealized capital gains. What would that do to the economy, which is now teetering also?
Well, it would destroy the innovation economy, Sean, because so much of the actual technological innovation in our economy is based in unrealized gains. But more importantly, these guys want to destroy the American energy sector, which would make us more reliant on China for the goods that we need. They want to open the American southern border. And like you said, not only does she want Medicare for all, she doesn't even care if you're a citizen, Sean. Kamala Harris has supported giving Medicare and Social Security benefits to illegal aliens. So the question for the American people is, do you want to bankrupt Social Security and Medicare by giving it to illegal aliens? Because if so, Kamala Harris is your person. If you want to preserve Social Security so that we don't throw a generation of elderly Americans into poverty, then Donald Trump is your candidate. And it's very simple, issue after issue. Do you want an open border? If no, Donald Trump is your guy. Do you want American government to protect American citizens? If you do, then clearly you got to back Donald Trump. Do you want a tax policy that promotes American workers and promotes building things in the United States of America? If so, you've got to vote for Donald Trump. Sean, it's really not complicated. On policy after policy, Kamala Harris is far to the left of even Joe Biden. She's governed that way, and she would do even worse if the American people give her promotion.
So both support the idea that it shouldn't be criminal to enter our country illegally. They both support sanctuary cities and states. They both support taxpayer dollars being used to support the cost of education, health care, and housing for illegal immigrants. And here's the problem, J.D. We've got 11 million unvetted Biden-Harris illegal immigrants. They're coming from a lot of countries that are our top geopolitical foes, but also we're catching all these people, as the congressional report pointed out this week, that have terror ties. 99 of them they released into the country. That tells me that's a real clear present danger to our country right now, that it's a matter of when, not if, we're going to get hit again. Do you agree with that?
I do, unfortunately, Sean. I mean, look, Borders Are Kamala Harris has handwritten an invitation to every illegal alien and every terrorist across the world coming through our southern border. It's wide open. They stopped deportations on day one. They tried to give amnesty to millions of people on day one. Kamala Harris, like you said, wants to decriminalize illegal aliens and then give them health care at taxpayer expense once they actually get here. That invites millions of people into our country who shouldn't be here, Sean. And you asked about Iran earlier. One of the things that reduces our leverage to respond to Iran is that we know there are Iranian-backed terrorists who are in this country right now. There's no way that they couldn't be here with over 10 million people coming in just the last 3 years. Kamala Harris has made us weaker because she has invited millions of illegal aliens into our country to break our laws and take advantage of taxpayer benefits. One final point on this, Sean. When I talk to Americans, one of the biggest concerns I hear is, why are housing costs so high? I'll give you two reasons, Sean. Number one, there are 20 million illegal aliens here who shouldn't be here, who are competing with Americans for scarce homes. Number two, Kamala Harris has supported higher interest rates, which makes mortgages totally unaffordable for normal people. So these policies make ordinary Americans suffer. Of course, we haven't even talked about the fentanyl crisis. On issue after issue, she's putting the interests of illegal aliens above American citizens. We've got to stop Kamala Harris, Sean, and the only way to do that is to support Donald Trump at the ballot box.
You know, Kamala said it's the cost of democracy, the higher cost of energy because of their radical energy policies. Both are against fracking and drilling, et cetera. And these mandates that they're putting out regarding, quote, climate change initiatives, that to me would be America unilaterally, economically disarming and literally will be run over by the rest of the world because they're not going to put the same restrictions on their economies.
That's exactly right, Sean. In the name of clean energy, they want us to buy energy from tin pot dictators all over the world. But of course, those dictators have much dirtier economies than the United States of America. If you care about the environment, but also if you care about American jobs and American national security, you want us to develop American energy. You want us, as Trump says, to drill, baby, drill and become energy dominant again. There are so many reasons to reject their energy policy, Sean. And another one is that you cannot manufacture anything in the United States of America without low-cost power. When Kamala Harris says she wants to ban fracking, what she's really saying is that she wants to ban manufacturing in Pennsylvania and Michigan because you're not going to be able to make anything in America if China and Russia control all the energy assets. It's totally insane that we've gotten to a place as a country where Kamala Harris can call openly for eliminating America's energy sector and destroying the American manufacturing economy. But that's where we are, Sean. And of course, the American people are not going to vote for this so long as they know how radical she is. And this is why the media needs to do its job. I know they're liberal, Sean. I know they're biased. I know a lot of them are, frankly, DNC propagandists. But the media has to ask Kamala Harris questions. 16 days, Sean, since she sat for a real media interview. Are we going to get to the end of the election without anybody asking her questions? If so, it's disgraceful.
It is exactly the same strategy that Joe used in 2020. It's the hide in the basement strategy.
Exactly right.
Let me ask you a last question. You know, there was a lot made out of January 6th, and we learned a lot more. We learned that they never, for example, that they had actionable intelligence leading up to that. We learned there were 5 people in the Oval Office days before January 6th. I interviewed 4 of the 5. And that all are on record saying that Donald Trump wanted to call up the Guard. In writing, the Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., said no. I don't want to get back into that. How is it there was no attention paid to the fact that there were 574 riots, as I mentioned, dozens of dead Americans, billions in property damage, thousands of injured cops? Where's Liz Cheney when you need her? Because that sounds like insurrection.
It's a good question, Sean. Sounds like insurrection to me, too. And Governor Walz actually promoted the Black Lives Matter rioters who set Minneapolis on fire, destroyed a lot of black businesses, destroyed a lot of wealth in these historically black neighborhoods. And it really caused the poverty to skyrocket in Minneapolis. The fact that he was supporting the rioters burning down Minneapolis and then Kamala Harris was trying to bail them out of prison suggests they're the wrong team for this country. We don't want that approach taken nationwide.
All right, Senator Vance, we appreciate your time tonight. I know you've had a busy day. You've been out traveling. I know you'll be on the road pretty much every day. Thank you. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.